Hi, I'm Matt Bisaccio, and welcome to Marlborough Minute. We take people from the community and share their stories with the rest of you out there. Today, we've reached a little bit outside of Marlborough. Today, our guest is Technical Sergeant Tim Thorpe. He's from the 102nd Intelligence Wing over the Massachusetts Air National Guard. Thank you so much for spending a couple minutes with us.
No, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Now, you're the production recruiter, which means you're bringing people in, you're telling them about the benefits and all that so they feel good about signing up with the military. Before we get into the benefits or anything like that, would you mind just kind of telling me a little bit about your backstory and what inspired you to join the military?
Yeah, absolutely. So I enlisted back in 2013. I had initially gone to college first. I actually say I did it backwards. I went to Rhode Island College over in Providence, graduated with a degree in English, with original aspirations to be a teacher. When I saw the direction that education was going in, I kind of tailored it back, said, I don't know if this is really for me. However, graduating with a degree in English, I was also like, oh boy, what am I going to do with my life? So my father had served in the Mass Air National Guard. He just recently retired. He served for 30 years. So I kind of had him as an example to know what I was getting myself into and kind of be able to bounce those questions off of him. So in 2013, I began the enlistment process with my now boss, who was my recruiter, Master Sergeant Kevin O'Brien, and came in as a cyber systems ops apprentice. Went off to basic training, tech school, came back, and started my trajectory as what we would call a traditional guardsman, doing the 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year. After doing that for about a year and kind of retransitioning back into the civilian world and getting a civilian job selling wireless enterprise equipment, an opportunity came to work full-time at the base, again in cyber, supporting our top secret mission that we have out there. And I jumped on it, thinking I would do it for about 6 months, just kind of dip my toes in the water. And that turned into a career, which I haven't looked back on.
Cool. But what was it that made you want to transition from that cybersecurity job into what you're doing now with recruiting?
Honestly, it was the experience that I had with my recruiter, again, my now boss. It was such a positive experience. As recruiters, we try to ease that transition and make people feel comfortable with what they're getting themselves into. I felt that ease, and I felt the trust as far as, at the time, Technical Sergeant O'Brien had my best interest at heart. And when we went to basic training, there was about 4 of us in the flight from Otis Air Force Base. There was a point where all the kids, 50 of us, men, had to get all their paperwork, kind of in sorts that the recruiter had for them. And the 4 of us were squared away. And all the other kids, again, men, were kind of floundering. And that's when I looked at the other guys from Otis and I was like, wow, they hooked us up. I was like, this could have been a really bad day. And they made sure that they took care of us. And that's kind of the mantra of our office. So again, just, as far as on an ethical level, it's very easy for me to do my job when I know that, at the helm, we're in a good position from the top down.
And anybody that enlists in the military obviously believes in it, but you as a recruiter, you really have to believe in what you're doing, believe in what you're selling, because that's what you're doing. You're selling the idea and the dreams of being in the military and what that can do for somebody, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think at the front end, when you look at the uniform, everyone has the connotation of what this means to them. For me, though, I know the product that I have, and I know the ability that it has to help individuals achieve their goals. And again, I know we're going to dive into benefits, so I won't, jump into that right away. But I feel very confident, with the exception of maybe one thing, and that's travel, that I can help anybody get to exactly where they want to be, all the way from if they want to be a full-time military veteran serving, the whole way, or if they want to be an actor and they're just looking for a way to, pay for a college education through theater school. Again, I always lead off with the people who are sitting across from me as, what do you want to do? Like, if you could do anything. And, some people don't know. So I tailor it back to, all right, you're 5 years old, you're in kindergarten. They ask you, what do you want to be when you grow up? What is that? And then we kind of create a career path through the Air National Guard and how we can help.
You, like many other recruiters over the past 2.5, 3 years, have encountered a lot of roadblocks, one being COVID. How has that made your job that much more difficult?
So I've been in recruiting now for a little over a year. So I missed the big chunk of the COVID boom.
I see.
However, we still got a little bit of it on the back end. And the person who trained me, Technical Sergeant Dennis King, he had really been in the mix of it. And again, it's one of those where you kind of make the transition from these, face-to-face interactions. You go virtual. There's no more school lunchroom visits, the kind of traditional things that I think the community is used to with the recruiter. And for us, at least in the Mass Air National Guard, that's difficult because I think that at the front end, when you think military, I think a lot of people instantly think Army. And then, if they do dive down the other branches and they get to Air Force, they think active duty Air Force. Mm-hmm. If they think part-time Air Force, they think Air Force Reserves. And then here's the Guard, the third component of the Air Force with this whole other, realm of opportunities that they sometimes can't even offer on the federal side because we're a state entity. But tailing back to the question, it's absolutely difficult. Like I said, the thing, at least for me, is developing that trust and that relationship that I was afforded when I was recruited. And when you're doing that through virtual meeting, phone calls, Skypes, Google Meets, FaceTimes,
the intimate connection has to be lost on some level. And these people that are entrusting you, it seems as though when you sit down face to face with somebody, it must be a lot easier to convince them because they're right there with you. But if it's through a Skype or a Zoom meeting, does it seem like sometimes these people are having a difficult time trusting?
To a degree, absolutely. Again, I encourage people to bring their whole family. This is a decision that doesn't just affect you, but it affects your circle.
Of course.
So, I've sat across from parents who were not for this by the time we first sat down. And by the end of the meeting, they were the ones who were like, oh, this is about the best opportunity that you can have right now. So, but again, I have to hold myself accountable in that as well to make sure that, if the ball does get dropped, I'm the first one that they're coming for in this, kind of drawn out process. And again, I know we're going to dive into misconceptions too, so I'll hold off on that as well.
But you were just talking about parents being skeptical, and it's a nice segue into a follow-up. Again, over the last couple of years, there's been a push against, police and defunding the military and things like that. Have you seen your numbers drop in the wake of the social climate that we currently live in, and has that made your job that much more difficult?
As far as social climate, I think that, at least the people that I've encountered, they're interested in serving their country in some facet. And, that for me, that's honorable in itself. Again, only being in it for about a year and a half, I don't really have a tip of the iceberg to kind of weigh it against. Numbers, we're struggling, but I wouldn't say that it's because of interest. Interest is there. I hate to jump on you, but the biggest misconception is, kind of what I call my grandfather's military. I'm going to walk into a recruiter's office, I'm going to sign my name on a piece of paper, and bam, I'm in the military. And there's an extensive process that all happens well before commitment, and that's qualification.
The days of signing or faking your signature at 16 years old and then finding yourself overseas, I think, are long gone, right?
Long gone. Okay. Yeah.
Well, talk to me about how being in the military has positively affected you on a personal level, like who you were before and now because of the experiences that you've had, the person that you are now.
I'll say it's just I've always felt like I was a very accountable person. This is just another layer of that accountability. Coming from cyber, having a top secret security clearance, that's something that becomes our livelihood. So, and it's something that's an extreme benefit, but it also requires you to kind of tiptoe, and you have to make sure that you're crossing your T's, dotting your I's, make sure that you are accountable for what you're doing, both in your civilian life and in your military life. Because if you were to lose that top secret security clearance, you're no longer able to participate in the mission. So I'll say that it's continued to hold my hand as far as being the person that I feel like I've always kind of been, and giving me that extra nudge as far as, the standards that we have, which is integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all we do.
All right. That's a good answer. How about the benefits? Talk to me about, I'm a kid that comes in, I'm 17, 18 years old. I'm not really quite sure what's going on. I've heard that the military can be a place that I can go that can help me broaden my horizons. I can travel, I can see the world, but maybe I can also go to school. Can you kind of just take me through chapter and verse what it is that I would be offered as a kid walking into a recruiter's office?
Absolutely. I call it the yellow brick road. It's your option to go in whatever direction you want. And one of the biggest differences that we're offering as far as, being a state entity is that we have the Massachusetts tuition and fee waiver. I believe there's only 2 states in the country that offer both tuition and fees. And then when it comes to Massachusetts, we have such an onslaught of state and community colleges that your options are, I think somewhere upward of 30 for where you're going to go. So 17, 18-year-old kid, what do you want to do? What do you want to study? What do you want to take a chance on? Because it's free. And then as far as if you fail, you have this whole backup career as far as what the military is going to train you in. And the Air Force as a whole is the only branch that's accredited. So you're getting college credits while you're doing our technical school and our basic training. Tailoring back as far as to the education side of it is when you come in, it is exactly that. As far as if I was to ask you, even now, if you could do anything, what would you ideally like to do?
Well, I ideally like to do what I'm doing right. Well, I'm very fortunate in the fact that I kind of got into my profession late. But if I had had it the other way, I would have focused on this right out of high school. So I would have came in and I would have said, I'm really into sports. I've always watched TV programs like ESPN. I love sports broadcasting. How can you help me?
Absolutely. And again, I think the runner's high that I get most out of this job is I know as far as what most kids deal with college debt. And I know that, because I was one of them, as far as once you leave that college sphere, who's going to be there to pick me up? So I always try to lead with, hey, on average for these state or community colleges, you're going to be $36,000 in debt coming out of college. And that's average. That's not the high end. That's not including fees. That is strictly tuition. So what is, a traditional guard career look like as far as going to basic training, technical school, 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year? And not only are you not $36,000 in the hole, but the 4 years that you're going to college and, performing your military duties, you're $42,000 in the plus. So again, it's turned, the way that I put it with the kids is, here's the hole, here's the plus. You're going to dig your way out just to get to what you could already have. And I think that that's one of those things that, maybe a 17, 18-year-old kid isn't looking at, but when their friends are out buying cars or buying houses, and they're strapped by whatever debt of a Division I school, it's unfortunate.
What about for those that may come to you in their mid-20s, late 20s? Maybe they have a lot of college debt already. Is there any type of program that helps them with debt they already have, or is it strictly just for the educational purposes that they'll have going forward?
It's on the front end as of right now. Historically, we have had been able to pay it back, but that's not on the plate at the moment. Not to say that it won't be in the future. However, I'll say that the 23 to 30-year-olds is probably our largest market. People who are like me, coming out, not exactly sure where they're going to go. And I always use the example of one of my good friends who I came in with, who was 18 years old, but I use it for the 23-year-olds, as far as came in, got the benefits, hopped right into school at UMass Lowell working online, worked full-time for the military while he was doing it. Once he got halfway through his bachelor's, got hired by a defense contractor, still working on base, still working on his bachelor's, all for free. And then as he wrapped up his bachelor's, rolled right into his master's, switched to a different defense contractor. And at that point, he had pretty much wrapped up his contract with his military career. So he was no longer bound to the base. Asked the defense contractor, hey, send me wherever you want to send me. And they said, we got an opening in Germany. Went out to Germany, and, I don't think he'd be offended if I shared it, but he clears $14,000 a month because of his free master's degree, a top secret security clearance.
That's pretty good, guys. That's not bad. That's not bad at all.
I always say he swaps out his Audi every year. He shows up in Gucci sneakers that are dirty, and he's that guy, which is great, and I'm happy for him.
But that's an obvious success story.
It is, and he's just. It sounds like I'm pandering, but he is truly just one of them. All of my peers, again, as far as the cyber career field, I'm always very forthfront with my applicants. As far as I worked with computers a long time, I like this type of interaction. But for the people who love the computers or the intel, or they can really dive into the three-letter agencies, the defense contractors, there's a lot of success that's waiting right there for you.
Now, it seems like there's a lot of good associated with it, but there may still be, people out there that are skeptical. There may be some misconceptions about the utilization of different benefits. Is there anything that you can say to help kind of alleviate some of those fears?
I think one of the largest misconceptions, I'll hit the two largest. We already touched on one as far as just sign your name. And, I always like to explain to my applicants that this isn't an active duty branch. The active duty process is when you go to get qualified up at MEPS, which is our medical evaluation center, they're going to start the enlistment process right there as far as your commitment. For us, after you get qualified, you come back to us. We show you our vacancy roster. We say, here are the jobs that we have available. Which ones would you like to see? We then take you on the base to the unit that you would potentially be joining. And again, we do that specifically because let's say you really want to be military police, security forces for us. And your second choice is finance. And you're telling me I picked finance just because, you told me to pick three. But you go to the security forces and you realize, I'm kind of an outsider here. I don't really have that kind of rapport. However, you go to the finance office and you're buddy-buddy with everyone and they speak your language. So we want to make sure that the process is, everything is lined up exactly how you would like to see it before you commit. Once you pick that job, now we start talking about the commitment side of it. The other misconception, again, we kind of touched on it, is the uniform. I think people see the uniform and, they immediately assume boots on the ground, you're going to send me somewhere where I don't want to be. And again, we're a state entity, part of the Department of Defense. We serve Massachusetts, the country, but we're making sure that at a very I shouldn't say low level, but at a very minimal level, you're coming in 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year. You're ready to go in case something does happen, but you're in a ready status.
Right.
And again,
which I don't mean to step over, but which could very well happen. We're fortunate right now that we aren't in war times like we were 15, 20 years ago, but if we were, the life of a guardsman could be different. You could be sent overseas in lieu of an army mission because the army doesn't have quite enough people at the moment to kind of complete their mission. So it does happen where a person that joins the Guard, you kind of get this idea in your head that, it is basic training, tech school, then you come back to base, and like you said, it's the 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year. But the reality is that there is a slight chance that if things pop off, that they could be sent somewhere, right?
Absolutely. And that's, when I say absolutely, I guess I'm basing that on the idea of when you sign the contract, you are sacrificing, and again, that 1% chance, and I make that very forthfront with my applicants as well, that, these are the potential. Have we seen it? No. And again, being an intelligence wing, when Uncle Sam invests a lot of money to teach you how to be behind a computer and, protect the people overseas from an eye in the sky, it doesn't make a lot of sense to take that investment and put it in harm's way. We're very fortunate in that sense. Again, are different Guard units different? Absolutely. Are different branches different? Absolutely. But that's why it's very important. And I again, things I encourage my applicants to do the research, explore on other branches, weigh those percentages, and see what best fits you. I'll also say, a warrior isn't monolithic to, one career field. And that's where I say, as far as our Airman's Creed, we are American Airmen. We are, I feel like I just went blank on it, but we are warriors. If I messed that up, I apologize. It's been in my head all day. But, and what I mean by that is that the person who may be boots on the ground in one scenario from another unit their job is just as essential as the person doing the finance, so that person's family is getting the money back home. So this
way, support staff.
It's a support staff. Right. So it's a full circle thing, and everyone who participates in it, does their part.
Right. And I didn't mean to bring that up to be confrontational or anything, but I just want people that may be watching this to understand that, the world is a wild place. And if you are part of the military, that is a part of it, and that you could have this comfortable life, but at the bottom or at the end of it, there may be a situation where you are sent overseas. So I just wanted to make sure that was something that was clear. But thank you for answering that the way that you did. I appreciate it. The other question that I have as far as benefits is, what's the process like for somebody that wants to utilize the college education? Is it as easy as, okay, I'm a member of the military, I can enroll in open enrollment in college, or do I have to wait? Because I've heard of certain situations where there were military members that had to wait until enrollment was over. They had to wait until the first day of classes, approach the instructor, and then see if there were any openings in the class before they could enter the class. And they weren't just given the opportunity to enroll in open enrollment like everyone else was.
Oh, wow. Personally, never heard of that. And I don't want to just, because I'm sure that there's an example like that somewhere. I can only speak to my experience and the experience of my peers. And actually, I'm working with a recruit right now because they're just starting that process. We utilize a website. It's like a lot of letters and very specific, where we go on and we request the credits that we're looking to utilize for that semester. That request then goes to our commander and to our retentions office, where they then get approved. We then send those credits, and again, I'm using my specific scenario with the school that I attended, to their VA office, who then pushes it to admissions. And it's
a pretty streamlined process. So it's not.
I was extremely skeptical to begin with, and very impressed and surprised as to how easy they made it. And then again, I don't necessarily want to shout out one school over the other, but the school that I attended, I was even more impressed with how willing they were to work with veterans' schedules. The things that could interrupt a semester, and they were unbelievable as far as making sure that we were very well taken care of.
Good. It's good to hear, because people that are sacrificing themselves for the betterment of the country should be given just the equal opportunities to be able to enroll in these classes as anybody else, if not given preferential treatment. So when I've heard some of these stories before, I just wanted to make sure that that's not something that you've encountered at all, just to alleviate another potential concern for anybody that might be watching this.
No, of course. And again, I don't want to say that it can't happen, because I'm sure it does. It's just, again, my experience, my specific applicants, my peers, I've never heard of anything of that nature.
Good.
Yeah.
And the last thing that I just want to touch on, bringing it back to Marlborough. Marlborough is a very diverse community, both ethnically and socioeconomically. So as far as recruiting in general, is there any type of push or incentive to try to bring in more minority recruits? Is that something that is ever on a topic?
I wouldn't say it's incentive. We look at it at face value. We're all airmen. However, for this community being more diverse, one of the benefits that we do have is that after you enlist, go through basic training, you're able to obtain your citizenship. So if you are on a permanent resident card and you have more than 2 years on that permanent resident card, the second that you complete basic training, you can begin the citizenship process, which is just another added benefit. And that goes for the National Guard on both sides. And I've got to see that happen for some of my recruits. And again, the reason that I like my job so much is because the benefits offer what they do, whether it's school, whether it's citizenship. It's people furthering their life in the direction that they want to see it go in. And I'm fortunate to kind of be a part of that with the product that I'm able to offer.
That's great. Well, you certainly seem somebody that is really entrenched in this and power of conviction, and you really seem to love your job, and that's great. Sergeant Thorpe, thank you so much for taking a few minutes with us today. We certainly do appreciate it.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. That's going to do it for this episode of Marlborough Minute. We'll see you next time.